Today we are going to be having a discussion on the observance of World Day for Safety and Health at Work. Every year, the United Nations, on the 28th day of April, observes the World Day for Safety and Health at Work. Extremely important, since a lot of our time is spent at work, in the workplace. This year, the theme for World Day Safety and Health at Work is Act Together to Build a Positive Safety and Health Culture. And of course, we're all aware, for the past 2 years, little over 2 years, we have been grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic and how the COVID-19 pandemic has really changed somewhat how we view the world of work. We will be discussing some of that on this program today in terms of what we have learned, the lessons learned in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic, what it has taught us about safety and health in the workplace. Today I am joined by 3 panelists who will engage you in this lively and timely discussion. I have on my immediate right Mr. Junique Eddy, and he's the acting unit head for the Occupation Safety and Health and Environment unit at the Department of Labor. Next, I have Mr. Kevin Hope, and Mr. Hope is the Executive Director of the St. Kitts and Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce. And then I have Ms. Michelina Charles Hazel, and she is the first Vice President of the St. Kitts and Nevis Trades and Labor Union. A warm welcome to all 3 of you, and it is an honor to have you on this panel this afternoon to discuss this topic. Right, so I'm going to start with Mr. Eddy from the Department of Labor. Mr. Eddy, how is the Department of Labor promoting a safe and healthy culture at work?
Right. I want to thank you, Leslie, for having us here on the program, working for you. I also want to adopt the protocol that has been established. Ms. Michelina Charles Hazel of the St. Kitts and Nevis Trades and Labor Union, the first Vice President. My colleague here, Mr. Kevin Hope, who is the Executive Director of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Leslie, that's a very important question, and I'll just give a brief overview of some of the things that we do to basically enhance the social dialogue towards a culture of safety and health. Now, once we're talking about building and maintaining a preventative safety and health culture, this basically entails a culture in which the right to a safe and healthy working environment is respected at all levels, where governments, employers, and workers actively participate in securing a safe and healthy working environment through a system of defined rights, responsibilities, and duties, and where the principle of prevention is accorded the highest priority. At the national level, the government as a whole commits to building and maintaining a preventative safety and health culture, ensuring OSH, occupational safety and health, is considered a priority in the national agenda. Adequate means and resources are allocated to increase general awareness of OSH, knowledge of hazards and risks, and understanding of their prevention and control. Through social dialogue, the tripartite constituents, which we have ably represented here, actively participate in all phases of the OSH decision-making processes. The social dialogue contributes towards improving the quality of OSH policies and strategies, building ownership and commitment, facilitating their rapid and more effective implementation at the workplace level, compliance with OSH regulations, integration of OSH management systems into the business's general management structure, and the culture change to achieve a positive ASH culture, where ASH is considered as a core value of the enterprise, integrated into every aspect of the enterprise's dealings. Open communication and dialogue built on trust and mutual respect. Positive ASH leadership by employers and top management. Training and information for all workers to ensure they can actively participate in actions to improve ASH. And then we look at the key role of social dialogue during the ongoing COVID-19 crisis. And then we look at the national level again, where governments who prioritize the active participation of employers and workers' organizations in ASH governance have been able to collectively develop and implement emergency laws, policies, and interventions. And at the workplace level, workers' participation and engagement through joint ASH committees and workers' ASH representatives have been key in promoting compliance and designing and applying suitable and effective measures to eliminate hazards or minimize risks that are adapted at the workplace and workers' needs. So basically, in a nutshell, that's why this program is one of the avenues we use, or we tend to use, while going through this pandemic and going through the safety and health part of it, where we would need our tripartite constituents to play a key role, where we can basically identify where we are and where we need to be in the short future, so that we can all create a better or safer health culture for us here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Right, thank you so much, Mr. Eddie. Now, Mr. Hope, you represent the business community, the private sector on the panel, the Chamber, St. Kitts and Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Now, what message does the Chamber of Industry and Commerce have in terms of businesses, the business community, promoting a safe and healthy culture at work?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Williams. Permit me, first and foremost, to recognize all administrative professionals as they celebrate Admin Professional Day today, and as they ensure our enterprises are organized, run efficiently and effectively. The 2022 theme for World's Day for Safety and Health at Work is, let's act together to build a positive safety and health culture. So the St. Kitts and Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce is committed and has acted to build a positive safety and health culture among our members. This was evident during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, where we assisted in the design of interventions and guidelines and took actions to protect lives and livelihoods. Of importance, we see the social partnership as paramount in terms of the strengthening of the social partnership for us to build social and economic resilience for workers, households, and firms in St. Kitts and Nevis. It's important for the listening audience to understand who or our why, the Chamber's purpose. We oftentimes viewed or recognized as the leading voice for business and employers in the Federation, with over 73 years of experience. And I would say our primary role or objective can be captured in our ABCs. Advocating for members by influencing the policy and regulatory environment so that it is conducive to job creation and inclusive growth. Building and expanding businesses. The Chamber is committed to helping businesses succeed and ensure prosperity for the family employed within or owned by the enterprises. And C, connecting the community through investments and leadership, including thought leadership, in areas such as education, health, social protection, and infrastructure. So as such, and I would adopt the ABCs again to speak a little bit about how we positively impact health and safety. So through our advocacy work, we've contributed to the social partnerships, and a social partnership which includes government, the labor union, and civil society, during the pandemic in safeguarding the health and well-being of our workers. Workers and employers work together in designing COVID-19 mitigation plans, work from home protocols, and also in terms of the advocacy and leadership we provided or supported in ensuring our key sectors such as manufacturing and tourism, and also the distributive trade, were able to stay open and continue some buoyancy to ensure we can sustain livelihoods. In terms of the whole building and expanding enterprises or businesses, our top concern were making sure that we support our employees' work-life balance. What COVID-19 exposed is the need for us to actually invest more attention and support in terms of mental well-being or mental health, and I'll speak a little bit about that later. We wanted to ensure that health and safety measures, that our staff and management abided by the health and safety measures, including the public, our clients. We were able to engage our employees for a number of our professional services enterprise in terms of also virtual office environments. And this is also something for which the whole issue around positive work and safety environment also extends, because now our workplace extends to the home. How do we try to ensure that our staff, our clients, our members are able to work effectively from home? So similarly, to date, while we have had a reduction in COVID-19 cases, the ongoing concerns about the safe return to work, and again, this is important, and also trying to find ways now that we've recognized the importance of mental health and well-being. How do we maintain an adequate work-life balance in this new environment? Of importance, several of our members, I canvassed several of our members in preparation and just to have some general discussion. And let me just share with the public what was some of the feedback. Safety is everybody's business, and we tend to take it from the perspective or standpoint that the way you enter the door with your 10 fingers and 10 toes, that we want to ensure that you leave with your full body intact when you exit. So while the whole issue with respect to industrial accidents is present, and we've seen or we are aware of some cases in the past with respect to loss of lives, regrettably, and damage to bodies, many of our companies see the importance, and several of them, especially in manufacturing, have what we call safety departments and also safety managers, certified safety managers. We see the importance of undertaking regular safety audits. We also see the importance of ensuring that there is adequate awareness and education in terms of our annual capacity building within our firms. And we have an active manufacturing division within the Chamber of Industry and Commerce that would visit our members, the plants, to educate them on occupational safety and health. Let me share two areas of interest in this space, for example, where several of our members actually adopt the whole learning from failure. So in each area where they may have had accidents or issues in the past, they would evaluate these accidents, they would have some mock-ups on such, and also start having discussions with their staff in terms of how could they adequately mitigate these incidents in the future and also to improve upon them. One particular firm spoke about the importance of incentives and rewards. So in this case, in this particular firm, they actually reward employees for identifying hazards, in addition to as much as $100 per person if you identify a hazard. So again, it's really about having ownership within our firms to be able to identify hazards and contribute meaningfully to the mitigation plan. Of importance, and something we are actually promoting more and more of within our membership, is the need post-COVID, at this current stage, to double down on employee engagement and ensure that the moral and level of comfort of our employees is at a high. We recognize the benefits of such high morals, and I'm not sure how many of you may be aware of the phrase an entrepreneur. But this is where workers actually become owners within the workplace and take some form of ownership, and where they recognize and contribute meaningfully to the output and the quality of the output. And in circumstances like this, where there is an increase in employee engagement, we've seen cases where there isn't really such demands around whether employees are working overtime because there's a commitment to delivering. In terms of connecting the community, recently we've been promoting a lot of thought leadership, and we are continuing in the month of May, for example, where we want to discuss the whole issue of mental well-being. We recognize that mental well-being is positively correlated with actually increased staff engagement and an improvement on the bottom line. So there's some estimates we've shared with some of our members in terms of where as much as 15% of employees within firms internationally are experiencing some sort of mental health issue or challenge. And mental health in this case, as we know, is emotional, psychological, and social well-being. And we recognize that if we could impact mental health or mental well-being in a positive way, we are able to ensure that our employees are able to realize their full potential, they're able to be more productive, work in terms of work through or manage some of the pressures that comes, and even have more positive relationships. And this extends not only within the firm, but within our households and our community. And as such, at the Chamber, we see it as our business, because we're a membership association, that part of our training, part of our engagement of our members is to champion mental well-being for both management and staff, and also to try to impact or take positive actions to build a culture and provide greater support for those who are in need. So in closing, at least in terms of my opening remarks, looking after and valuing the people who are part of our organization is paramount, and we see it at the Chamber as part of our bread and butter. And we hope for the private sector and the wider community, as being part of this dialogue, social partnership dialogue, is that we could aim for more supportive, happy, productive workplaces and households.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ho. Now, Michelina, the St. Kitts and Nevis Trades and Labor Union, what role is the St. Kitts and Nevis Trades and Labor Union playing in terms of representing workers' rights with respect to occupational health and safety at work? And how is the union working with government to develop safety measures? And in a nutshell, tell us the purpose of the St. Kitts and Nevis Trades and Labor Union.
Hi and good day, St. Kitts and Nevis speaking world. Before I start, please allow me to recognize the president of the St. Kitts and Nevis Trades and Labor Union, Comrade Bridgewater, who has also been a long-standing member of the movement. A high salute to you. On Administrative Day, another high salute to Comrade Precious Mills, our Administrative Secretary or leader. You do so much work. You are phenomenal. Thank you to all of the administrative staff in the education sector. Thank you for keeping the offices open and running and supporting us. On behalf of the General Executive of the St. Kitts Nevis Labor Trade Union, I bring regards. The Labor Commissioner, thank you for this election. Mr. Chair, to my panel, thank you. It is indeed an opportunity to be here to represent such an able organization. Let me put a disclaimer out there. I am a teacher, so I came with my notes. And the theme for today is let us act together to build a positive safety and health culture. Let's start first with the definition of what is a union, because I think we take for granted an understanding of what something is. And if you do not understand what something is, it is hard to grapple with what should it be doing, how can it benefit me, and how do I relate to this thing in community. So a union is an independent workers' organization that is constituted for the purpose of furthering and defending the interests of workers. So a union is basically an organization that is constructed to defend the interests of workers. And we know the pandemic really rocked the global workforce. Workers were out of a job. They were reimagining what a job is. Job security all of a sudden went out of the window. As a teacher, my classroom became virtual for the first time. And I know some teachers were working in the profession for decades, and we had to learn technology because our classrooms now were invisible. We are cultured in a space where brick and mortar and sit down and I am the authority and I'm visible, I can care. My colleagues so ably touched on the issue of mental health of the employee. And one of the things we so ably do in education is that we connect and we care in order to teach. What was happening to the workers who were not able to continue working? How do you justify from the business end telling a worker that, well, the business is closed, so we can't pay you, we are not generating an income? And our membership coming to us with this crisis of sorts. And then we had to address issues of social security. They can't pay you because they were not paying social security. And not paying social security puts the employee at risk because lots of babies were born during COVID. So you're on maternity leave, but there is no revenue coming into your company. So you can't be paid, but you're on maternity leave. And so the union has been in constant social dialogue about the importance of paying social security. Small businesses, I know there is a struggle to adequately take care of your staff. And when we talk about promoting positive, safe, and healthy work environment, taking care of their finances is very important to the continuation of the individual and the family life, as well as encouraging the entrepreneur, that is the business owner, to pay their social security because it offers a safety net in crisis. I think the global workforce has, at least not in my lifetime, has experienced something as strange and different and traumatic and as invisible as COVID. So as we continue to learn from surprises or failures, that is something that the union has been creating advocacy for in dialogue with factory workers and generally just small companies. The importance of paying your social security for your employees and for yourself because it provides financial securities in times of crisis. There were a number of instances where persons were dismissed, some justly, some not so justly. And what as a union we realize is that the legislation needs to be updated. Because we had a lot of conversation globally, not just in sync, it's about taking off the vaccination. And should you be terminated because you don't take the vaccination? Are you putting the company employees and their families at risk because you're not vaccinated? This is a conversation that we never had to have before. And there was nothing within the legislation that protected these employees who felt that they were so unfairly sent home. And so as an organization that defends and protects workers' rights, we are now having this conversation with our legal team and with the government about creating legislation that protects the workers under almost all circumstances. Of course, this is a circumstance that we did not see coming. And so the union is at the forefront. We are always available for social dialogue and social partnership. Where do we fit in? How can we add value? We have a long-standing relationship with our industrial workers, those ladies that are working at the factory and are adding so much value to the economy of St. Kitts and Nevis. We are constantly negotiating and enforcing remuneration. I'm not sure how much persons are aware that a number of our factories have closed recently and some are in the process of closing. And so the union is at the forefront of negotiating proper severance pay. That is something we have to deal with every day. When these factory closes, we ensure that these women are paid properly, paid fairly, and that they are able to have some sort of skill training and development to transfer or to transition into different work areas. And that's basically how we have been negotiating, collaborating, and working together during the pandemic. Just a small synopsis of the incredible work of the union so far.
Right. Thank you very much, Michelina, for your presentation. Now, we have touched a lot on what we are doing, what the Chamber is doing, what the Department of Labor is doing. We're going to look a little bit more at that. But I want us to look at the why. So, why is it important to voice concerns around safety and health at work? I heard the coming out of what you're saying, the whole need for social dialogue, which is very important. And in order to have social dialogue, it simply means that you should have a sort of a occupational safety and health management system. You know, you want to speak to people at the national level, at the workplace level, the employee and worker cooperation, and so on, and other partners, just as we have the Chamber of Industry and Commerce here, and the St. Kitts and Nevis Trades and Labor Union. So, Mr. Eddie, tell me, why is it important to the Department of Labor to voice concerns around safety and health at work?
Thank you, Leslie. Again, I think this question comes about, as you would have indicated, the word of social dialogue. And let me start by basically addressing what is social dialogue, what does it address. So it looks at social dialogue refers to all types of negotiation and consultation, or simply the exchange of information between or among representatives of governments, employers and workers on issues of common interest relating to economic and social policies. Social dialogue may be informal or institutionalized and often includes both. It takes place at different levels, international, national, regional, local, and as Leslie would have indicated, at the workplace as well. It involves the social partners, my colleague here from the Chamber, and also my other colleague from the St. Kitts and Nevis Trades and Labor Union. It involves all of us in different economic sectors, within a single sector, or in a single company or group of companies. The various forms of social dialogue may address the tripartite process, where this is the government, which involves the Ministry of Labor and or other ministries concerned, as an official party to the dialogue, a tripartite plus process, where this deals with issues beyond the world of work, with actors representing specific concerns and interests of the civil society. Bipartite relations between labor and management or employers and workers organizations. Collective bargaining, where consisting of all the negotiations which take place between an employer, a group of employers, or one or more employers' organizations on the one hand, and one or more workers' organizations on the other. For A, determining working conditions and terms of employment, and or B, regulating relations between employers and workers, and C, regulating relations between employers of the organizations and the workers' organization or workers' organization. And then we look at the workplace cooperation. We are ranging from information sharing to consultation or joint decision making. The tripartite structure of the ILO allows employers, workers and governments to take part in this decision making on international labor matters to promote social justice and decent work for all. My colleague on the far right would have indicated that, these laws or legislation would need some updating. However, we see that in every aspect of what are discussions, every fraction would tend to look at the best possible outcome for their specific fraction. And I think throughout this consultation between the tripartite partners, this is where everyone will try to meet at somewhat of a level ground, where if the worker representative is looking for something, the employer representative is looking for something as well. The government now acts as a mediatory personnel. We are not on anybody's side. However, we are still looking at meeting the aspects of both, or even three of us, the tripartite level, where it doesn't just serve to get one person's aspect out of it. We try to please everyone, and I think that's one of the reasons why certain laws or legislation get the different opinions from the different fractions of the side. Which side you're on, it depends on which side you're on. You might feel like this law or this legislation pleases the employer. Another fraction might say, hey, this specific law or legislation pleases the employee. So I think it's good, it's great for us to understand that a law might not be fair to all fractions, but it's just about meeting in the middle ground, which would then allow everyone to at least prosper and not feel as if they're being unfairly treated or unfairly dealt with regarding the world of work.
Mr. Hope, you mentioned, of course, in your presentation, a number of areas. You spoke about mental health. You spoke about avoiding accidents on the job and injuries and so on. Now, you are here in the capacity as the Executive Director of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, the business community, the private sector. As some would say, it is the engine of growth, the private sector. Now, why is it so important for businesses, enterprises, to develop a preventative approach in terms of accidents and injuries at work? And what impact can this have on the business community if measures are not taken to prevent accidents, injuries, diseases in the workplace?
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I would reiterate what I said earlier in the sense that safety is everybody's business. And again, we tend to look at it from the 10 fingers and 10 toes when you enter the door. So the promotion of occupational safety and health is important at all levels. And if we look at it on one hand from the firm, on the other hand from the household. So with respect to the firm, accidents and injuries, or just total negligence on our part, if that's the case, can result in it affects our bottom line. So if we look at it in terms of lost productivity, in cases where, again, injury may affect person's ability to perform their task. If we look at it in terms of the cost associated with the absence as a result of sickness, and even though in a large measure we would have the social security system there to provide some benefit to the affected individual, it is also still affecting the bottom line for the firm. And equally, the cost of staff turnover, because failure, I mean, God forbid, if someone died or they're injured in terms of bodily harm or damage, it's going to be difficult for that person to actually sustain him or herself. And as such, I would go to talk about the impact on the household. So, occupational safety and health issues in terms of workplace damage, workplace loss in terms of loss of a limb, actually affects the entire household and the future of that household. If we talk about the ability that it's going to have on your ability to continue earning or generating income, if we talk about your emotional well-being or state of mind, especially where you feel you're unable to provide for your family, we saw incidents of that during the loss of income during the COVID-19 pandemic. We also want to think of it in terms of your ability or lack thereof to provide for your children and even their education. And as such, it's why we actively encourage our staff, our management to put systems in place, or more importantly, our members within the chamber to put systems in place to actually practice safety in the workplace and by extension at home. So for us, OSH is of great importance. It affects our bottom line, but most importantly, it affects our households and it affects our community. So it's all of our business in promoting a positive workplace and culture, and actually supporting and working together to get the legislation in place, to have some form of redress in terms of loss of income, but even in providing an avenue to demonstrate that we care for your caring community.
Right, and you touched on a number of things because, I mean, the International Labour Organization said that around 2.9 million workers die every year due to occupational accidents and diseases, and at least 402 million people suffer from non-fatal occupational injuries. Now that's a lot. And when you think of that combined, you think of the major economic losses for enterprises, and the economy as a whole is affected. You know, and all of this can be measured as well in terms of the burden on health care, health costs, compensation costs, Michelina, production losses if people are out of the workplace, and reduced work capacity and lower workforce participation. So prevention is actually key. Now, Michelina, you spoke about a lot of people losing their jobs during the pandemic, which is still ongoing. It is still not over, even though we have seen a lot of progress, probably because of the vaccination and so on. But you spoke about the crises that many people went through and perhaps are still going through because of loss of employment, employers not paying their social security, which means putting them at a disadvantage for social safety nets that you mentioned. What do you think, Michelina, can be done to strengthen the social dialogue to promote OSH, occupational safety and health, during crises and beyond?
I like that question. What can be done to promote social safety? What can be done to minimize consequences of the worker and the burden of the worker in the crisis? In 2020, the ILO produced a document. I would call it the TVET document, Technical, Vocational and Educational Training. And there was a country analysis done on our beautiful federation, St. Kitts and Nevis. The TVET Council was established in 2006 by the Education Act in 2005. And luckily for me, I have the esteemed pleasure of being a TVET educator for 11 years. I'm a visual arts teacher. What do we do in education? What is TVET? What is competency-based education, and what is the value of competency-based education in an environment or in a culture where all we focus on is academics? How do we retrain the workforce? Is retraining the workforce important now that some industries are struggling to recover? No, some industries will never recover. No, some industries require hybridization and change. How do we negotiate development of the worker in an ever-changing work in culture in our communities? The country analysis of St. Kitts and Nevis from the ILO was not pretty. It was not pretty. When I read the things CARICOM report had to say about St. Kitts, I was like, I understand, and it is honest, because in order for the worker to be adequately prepared from a skill-based approach, the teacher needs to be adequately prepared, because I am carrying out the instruction. Kudos to the Ministry of Education. I am certain they did a number of weeks, months of training for TVET teachers in some specific areas, and this was to adequately equip those persons who would be on the front line, the TVET trainers, to train the children. Why is this important? In order for things like compliance to occur, my business partner over here, representing the chambers, competency must be in place for compliance to function. I was teaching this morning, and I had to sit down because I'm trying to teach the skill, but my children are missing basic skills like reading and writing. And how do you expect them to decode information? And decode simply means reading, to comply with the OSH regulations on the work site if they cannot read. So they have a skill certificate, but they cannot read. They are good construction workers, but they cannot read the safety manual or the operation manual to keep them safe. And so it is very important that in planning, developing, and implementation, we reconsider what and who are thought leaders who are adequately prepared and informed to contribute in projects development and workforce planning. Where are my teachers on these boards? Where are my educators? I am sure when you look into the skilled profession, and I can tell you because I know them, they are my children. When I look at organizations such as SKNIS or the police force or the nursing, they would have come through my classroom. And so I understand and I know firsthand the deficiencies. In order for compliance to occur, competency must first be in place. We cannot have adherence to things like OSH. We cannot have adherence to things like social safety and dialogue if our workers are not first adequately prepared. And I think that is a thing that we need to address. We need to address education and continuous education for the workforce, because when a child gets a TVET certificate, they would have the opportunity to be academically inclined and skilled. So let's say, for example, we have lots of entrepreneurs coming out. This generation is very different and very independent. So you would have the business student, the A+ business student, deciding, I want to go and plait hair. I want to go and do nails. I could not tell my mother I want to go and do nails. She would say, that is not what bright girls do. You get a nice job. I went to study art, creative arts, TVET, and my mother had a very hard time with it because I was a bright child. So I needed to do what bright and professional people do. How do we marry academic and skill training so that we can equip our workers, our children, to transition, to pivot, and adequately provide and defend for themselves? We need to renegotiate who are the adequate stakeholders in worker development, work design, and community development. We need educators in every sector, just like how Four Seasons have nurses, the Marriott have nurses assigned. You need proper planning, training, and development in order for us to make sense in the workforce. You cannot have compliance without competency. And it is important for the union because we have a lot of stereotype of workers. And we don't see the teacher in the development space and in the work organization space because we have a culture that say that is not the teacher's place. You must go and teach the nation's children, and that is the confinement of your competency, and that is the confinement of your jobs. But we know police officers, we know skeleton workers, we know cable workers, we know factory workers, we know Marriott workers, teachers, even ourselves. There are gaps. There are educational and learning and competency gaps that prohibits, as my good friend from the worker says, it limits the bottom line. If you don't have adequate, skilled, competent workers, it is going to affect the work product, it is going to cost you more in error, it is going to cost you more in redundancy. So it is very important when we push in the OSH agenda, we push it with an education agenda. Yes. Because it cannot be functional, compliance cannot be functional without competency.
Right, Michelina, you said quite a mouthful, which leads me into my next round of questions. That have to do with, of course, we spoke about the collaborative approach, the social dialogue that needs to take place. Let us move now. You were speaking a lot in terms of education, building awareness, competency, increasing capacity. We need to talk about a regulatory framework, Mr. Eddie, at the workplace level, the employer and the worker cooperation, because that is very important for effective OSH management, extremely effective. So let's get into some practical things. What is really being done by the Department of Labor to help the workforce, workplaces, to understand the importance of a positive safety and health culture, and in terms of the implementation, what sort of a compliance framework is in place? What standards are you looking for in terms of the workplace in promoting this health and safety, the culture? Could you speak to some of that practically?
Thank you again, Mr. Williams. I think this is a perfect opportunity to just state what the mandate of the government in this regard, the Department of Labor has in regards to labor inspections or labor officers who carry out inspections. And I take us to the St. Christopher Nevis chapter 18.18 Labor Act. Basically, this is the framework that we use at one of our conveniences when we do labor inspections in the workforce. And I go straight to chapter 10, which speaks to the appointment of inspectors. And it says, the Governor General, acting on the recommendation of the Public Service Commission, may appoint such inspectors under whatever title he or she may from time to time fix, as he or she may think necessary to assist the Labor Commissioner in the execution of this act. I go on to chapter 11, duties of the inspector. The duties of the inspector shall be A, to investigate and report whether the laws in force concerning conditions of employment and the protection of workers in their occupations are duly applied, to give technical information and advice whenever necessary to employers and workers as to the most effective means of complying with existing laws, as Michelina would have touched on. C, to indicate in his or her inspection reports difficulties or abuses not specifically covered by existing laws. And in this aspect, we look at the ILO recommendations, where it basically says that where there is a lapse in a legislation, a local legislation, the ILO recommendations would then take precedent. D, to visit and inspect places where workers are employed and to institute inquiries for the purpose of performing his or her duties as set out in paragraphs A, B, C. And E, to establish statistical data. That's why I think you would have touched base on this in terms of the report that you would have gave, where the data itself would show us the trends whether good or bad, the trends that we are taking as a country, and then where we need to go basically in terms of rectifying or correcting those trends. I move on to part 12, powers of the inspector, where it says an inspector may, at any working hour of the day or night, without previous notice, enter and inspect any estate, factory, boiling house, curing house, workshop, workroom, foundry, printing office, shop, store, counting house, warehouse, dock, wharf, or other place where he or she has reasonable cause to believe that workers are employed. This aspect basically, that's why it looks at where the labor inspectors goes out and does inspections. Throughout these inspections at the different establishments, we would then dialogue with the management and the workers as well in terms of what safety practices they do exhibit. If we are to do the report itself, we would then have a checklist where we have some basic necessities that we check for. Some small basic things like wet floor signs. We often ask persons, how many wet floor signs would you need? This is basically dependent upon how big your organization is. Can one wet floor sign actively basically say, well, this area is wet, can down there be wet at the same time if you only have one wet floor sign? So simple things like that. We check for the proper ventilation of the area. We check for your PPEs, which is your personal protective equipment. Are you wearing your equipment correctly? Are you using them correctly? Are you actively trained? Michelina would have touched on that again when it comes to competency. Are you using them? Do persons understand why they should use these protective gears when carrying out their jobs? I think one of the issues in our culture, our society, is that persons tend to feel like at the job they are supposed to be comfortable. Now, how comfortable can you be carrying out a duty when the duty insists you being properly covered in all the necessary PPEs that would protect you, the worker, in doing this job or this duty? So I think there is one level where one would want to be comfortable, but you're wearing a vest. You're wearing a simple vest that you would wear at home. You're wearing a jean pants that is cut off, or a jean pants that doesn't cover as much of your body that it should. And then you're wearing shoes that probably doesn't give you the grip, probably doesn't protect you from something falling on your feet. Does the comfort bar or the comfort then replaces you being protected? And I think that is one of the issues in our society where we actually feel like it's comfort over protection. And I think that is one of the areas, me and Kevin were talking about it sometime yesterday. We are saying that the culture needs to change. And I think that is ably assisted by the theme for this year's World Day for Safety and Health, where we need to get the culture change regarding safety and health. I think we at the department has a few initiatives that we have tried or we will continue to try to implement regarding awareness campaigns. We have tried going out into the high school levels, even the CFBC levels, where we're trying to get persons before they come into the world of work to be aware of ASH, be aware of why is it important to be safe on the job. I think most persons would come and they would only find out on the job about safety and health. And I think Michelina, being a teacher, she would understand, or she would have touched on that point where if you are not understanding, if you can't do the basic reading and writing and understanding of the practices or the processes, you won't carry it out correctly. You would simply just go through the motion. The boss would come, your manager would come and tell you, hey, you need to have on this, you need to have on this. But because he or she doesn't understand fully why this is so important from both him or her level and the business level, they probably would go through the motion. They probably would wait haphazardly. They probably would wear half. They leave one home. They know they're supposed to wear the helmet. They leave the helmet home, and then when they come to the job, they tell their employer, boss, I left my protective gears at home, thinking that the boss would say, okay, you can do the job still because you know what to do. That isn't the point. The point isn't that you know what to do. The point is that you should protect yourself at all times. Because then you're looking at something happens, and then the manager or the company has to then take some level of accountability because they would have allowed you to do that without having the proper gears. So I think that's why the awareness campaigns, the educational campaigns that Michelina would have brought up, I think that would have to be more touched upon, more brought about in our society if we are to see any kind of change in terms of social health.
Mr. Hope, you touched on this in your presentation in terms of the rights and the responsibilities of both workers and management in the workplace. Because while on one hand that workers have rights, to be protected, it is important that management protects workers, those who are in charge, entrepreneurs and so on, that they protect their workers from injuries and diseases and all of that sort of thing. But at the very same time, what responsibilities do the worker have? Because rights and responsibilities go together. And it is important, yes, for the worker to know that they have certain rights, but at the very same time, they also have responsibilities.
Thank you, Angela. Interesting question. And let me start from saying that the responsibility, or more so the measure of a man or a measure of a woman, is how we take care of our household. And as such, when we go out to earn income or to generate income, because we have a responsibility to provide, the means and the livelihood, provide for the livelihood of our children, it means therefore, if we have that as our why, our reason for being, when we enter the place of work, we would take due care. We would seek to adhere to the guidelines and principles, recognizing that these guidelines and principles aren't meant to make you miserable, for fatigue, but it's actually for your own protection. And that's why we at the Chamber, we have a responsibility of ensuring that within our membership that we promote a lot of positive employee engagement. Don't underestimate the value of just simply organizing a simple walk with the staff. Probably today being Admin Professional Day, where we show our appreciation for our administrative professionals, having a meal, playing some dominoes, or even for those who are more sporting inclined, to go out and play a little T20 cricket, right? And you find, as I said, from increased employee engagement, from showing that we care, we are now more of a caring society, more of a caring enterprise, you find there now become ownership. I know a number of my counterparts in manufacturing, for example, prior to the school reopening, they give out a number of vouchers, they do a number of packages for their staff to give to their, so each member of my staff is now is a family, and by extension their kids is an extended family. Yeah? I know during cases where we may have illness in a number of our members, they would go and they would show due care, they would provide support. So in instances where we may have failures or shortcomings in the legislative framework, by caring, strengthen numbers, we're able to provide that sort of support to help stem the tide. And I mean, one of the lessons we should really recognize that we're learning as a result of this COVID-19 pandemic is the need for us to return to basic.
Right, we need to go to the phone lines, and we want to hear what you have to say, your contribution to this topic on a positive safety and health culture that we must develop within the workplace. So I look forward to your calling in and contributing to the discussion that we are having here today. The numbers to call are 466-2666, 466-2666, 662-8674, 662-8674, 767-4765, 767-4765, and the overseas number is 1-239-645-4500. That is 1-239-645-4500. Right. Now, Mr. Hope, the training and so on. Is the Chamber of Industry and Commerce facilitating any sort of a training with respect to OSH for entrepreneurs, the business community, manufacturers?
So we are. So within the manufacturing division, which is again one of the active sectors within the chamber, they do provide responsive training. So again, training for us within the chamber is demand driven. And for example, in discussions even recently with our manufacturing chairperson, we've discussed how can we collaborate, especially in the month of May where we're celebrating the whole labor movement, to actually put on a sort of hybrid where we can at least have an OSH certified trainer come and highlight to our members and the listening public, because a lot of our training, we try our best not only to keep it within the membership, but to extend it to the wider private sector so that they can actually be empowered as to what OSH is, the importance of OSH, and the benefits by adopting such practices. And permit me, Mr. Williams, to say that I listened intently to my esteemed colleague, Michelino, and she did speak about the private sector, right? And it hit me, because I felt I was getting some blows, yeah? But it hit me in that when we speak about the chamber, I think it's also important to educate the public that unlike some countries, whether in Europe or a number of these European or Asian countries where membership of the chamber is mandatory, and as such, by extension of being a legitimate business, you're going to get all of the benefits, all of the training. The chamber to date and in our democracies are oftentimes voluntary.
Right. Mr. Hope, stick a pin there. We have a caller on the line. Working for you, good afternoon. Hello? Working for you, good afternoon.
Hello?
Yes, we
Yeah,
we can hear you now, yes.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Leslie, and your wonderful guest you have there.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yeah, I love the education.
Yes.
And I'm so glad that you are educating the whole nation. The approach to working on any job. Now let me go overseas. I'd like to talk about them too. Those who we supposed to learn from. You cannot go on a construction site, a building construction site in America without the proper shoes, which is steel tip, boots, and hard hat. And your other protective gear must be your goggles and your gloves. Because too many persons have benefited from a little accident on a job. And those who are organizing these jobs, they are protecting themselves from lawsuit, and also they're protecting the policies of the insurance. Now we have some people here, they want to go on a job, and they want to wear the prettiest boots, the prettiest sneakers and socks and short pants, and the head toy with long cloth and long hair, and those things are dangerous around machine. Because a piece of your hair happens to hook in one of those rotating machines, God knows what could happen there. So I am glad that you are educating the people, and I think now, this is my advice. Not just come on radio and talk about it. You all should be proactive on these job sites around the place and make sure that the employees, they are adhering to the rules and regulation of safety on these jobs. Thank you all for listening.
For your valuable contribution.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right. Mr. Hope, you can continue. Yeah.
What I was saying is that unlike our European counterparts or Asian counterparts where membership in a business association is mandatory, in our neck of the woods it's voluntary. And I think I'm not here advocating that it become mandatory, but I'm here to espouse the importance of becoming part and parcel of your local Chamber of Industry and Commerce. And especially from the perspective where the benefits far outweigh the costs for membership.
Right.
Right? And even in this case that we're speaking about OSHA, OSH, the importance where we do have annual business training and support and development, that this could actually empower a number of our micro, small, and medium enterprises for which they would otherwise have had to pay if they were going to retain the services of a certified OSH professional.
Right. Mr. Hope, stick a pin there. We have another caller. Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes. As I was listening to your presentation,
Yes.
and Mr. Eddie as well, I think I need to weigh in here. First of all, safety in the workplace is everyone's business. It's not only the management, or it's not only laid at the employee's feet, but everyone's business. Now, it is important that each and every organization in this federation understand the importance of safety, where once an individual is damaged on the job, it affects the workplace, it affects the family, and by extension, the community. So this part must be at the forefront of the operation of any organization, the importance of safety. Now, I want to move quickly to, I think I heard a presentation by Mr. Eddie, that's what his name is, when he spoke about comfort in the workplace. Now, what I would like to say is that, and I hope I am wrong, where my interpretation of what he was saying, but I believe that every employee must have some level of comfort in the workplace. This is where they spend most of their day, so therefore they must be comfortable, whether mentally and physically, or even in the place of even comfort in air-conditioned setting. The place must be comfortable in order for the employee themselves to be productive. Now, I don't want us to think, well, comfort means that they must have a big screen TV, a cup of coffee, and all that on the job. No. Comfort is in the holistic view that we are looking at. That the employee, when once is comfortable, they can produce and be productive, which will benefit the organization on a whole. That's just my contribution.
Thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you.
Yes. Working for you, good afternoon. We seem to have lost that caller, but caller, you can call back. Right. In terms of the rights and responsibilities, sometimes you look at it in terms of a sort of a vertical approach. So management to employee. But at the very same time, it can be a horizontal approach as well. And so therefore, workers are looking out for the best interest of each other. Right? And so therefore, I remember once working in a particular department, and you know, there was something, I don't know what it was, some insect or something, it's an enclosed department. And somebody got to use BOP in the department. It's an enclosed department, and so therefore everybody is in there. By your action, you're affecting everybody within the department. So therefore, worker and worker must look out for each other and their best interest. If you see that, you know, somebody is doing something that is detrimental to their own health, the environment, and so on, then you can have some sort of a peer-to-peer advice that is being given. Yes, Michelina.
On behalf of the union, I am specifically highlighting sectors of workers that are not necessarily mentioned. That's why I'm talking about the teachers and the importance of the teacher in the workspace. I'm also a teacher, so I have a natural bias for how awesome we are. One of the things in preparation for being on this panel, I looked at is the care economy. And my colleagues so ably talk about the importance of care to cut costs and the importance of care to carry us in community where our social safety nets and finances might be inadequate. And so the care economy consists of paid and unpaid labor services that support caregiving. Caregiving is an industry, it's an act, it is a magic trick that happens around us every single day. But these workers hardly ever get any light. And so worker developing worker, sector developing sector, I think there is a need in every instances for us to have a collaborative approach in order to benefit from the whole product. And in terms of care, I know the social services led by Ms. Scarborough and her higher management and her team, they provide amazing elderly care services. And in looking at the care economy, care in the community generally falls on the woman and the girl. I was recently taking care of my grandmother, but I have an extremely demanding job as a teacher where I'm required to care to teach. So I have a full timetable. I have a grandmother to take care of before and after work. And I think it is important for us to voice and make visible, to redistribute the burden placed on the woman just by her very gender and position in the family. We need to have sectors such as social welfare coming into different organizations, chamber, education, construction, factory, where they impart the necessary information to develop the employees who are family members with the skills and make them aware of the resources available to do the work of care. Because child care, elderly care, community care is happening, it's real, it's burdensome, and because the healthcare system and the formal structures and economies of care are sometimes not enough, now we have an expanding private care economy. So we have a lot of nursing homes and mobile care agencies popping up, and we need them for support, but is it possible that they are providing a standard of care that is adequate to the needs of their clients? Because, again, you know, I became the primary caregiver of an elder. I did not have these skills, and I had to search within my community to see who is offering these skills, and I found that the nursing section of the CFBC, led by Dr. Bradshaw, you have nurses in there like Nurse Marshall, Nurse Mills, who are providing nursing education, sector, marine sector, developing human beings, and other sector to redistribute work labor to offshed burden in order that the woman has fair access, proper equipment, and knowledge to show up at work. I think the woman at work, in terms of OSH, in terms of mental health, in terms of the unfair work distribution from home, from professionalism, from society, from church, must also be addressed. Because what we are expected to do from professional, from community, is heavy, but it is also invisible. And we need to start having social dialogue about that invisible workload, redistribute it, allow the society to take on some of the workload, and protect women with families at work, and reward women who are working professionals, yet caring for elders, caring for children who are differently abled at home.
Yes, Micheline, and I think that coming out of what you're saying leads me to something else. and that is health. We're speaking about health. I know that a lot has been about the COVID-19, and health in the workplace is extremely important. Mental health and an environment that does not lead to unnecessary stress, an environment where there is no discrimination, whether that discrimination is gender discrimination, political discrimination, racial discrimination, an environment that is free of harassment, whether it is sexual harassment, political harassment, whatever it is or so on. Those things do not lead to a healthy work environment. And so therefore, we should also be trying to eradicate those things so that people can be more productive in the workplace and healthier mentally, emotionally, psychologically. Because we can talk about all the hardware and the hard gear, the hats and the shoes and so on, and the gloves and the masks that you must wear, and the hand sanitizer and all that sort of a thing. But sometimes there's a lot of things that need sanitizing in the workplace, really. You know, if we're to have a healthy workplace, because without mental health, really, there is really no health. Right? Working for you, good afternoon. We seem to have lost that caller. Now, I want us to spend some time in terms of what we have learned from the COVID-19 pandemic thus far in enhancing social dialogue towards a culture of safety and health at work. Let me hear you, Mr. Hope. What have we learned from the COVID-19 pandemic thus far, because the pandemic is not over, in enhancing social dialogue towards a culture of safety and health at work?
I think we're still learning. I think there is still a lot to learn, and for us to exercise humility and be humble, to know that there is so much knowledge gaps. To date, I was touched also by the care economy. Yeah. I'll share, I guess, a personal experience. Because even during the COVID-19 pandemic, in my prior job, I'm Vincentian, and the volcanic eruption in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and working overseas. And during that time, while working remotely, I was house husband. I had to provide support to the two young men in the home, and still try to double up and help with their, well, the elder in terms of his homework and ensuring he's listening and participating in Zoom. And while I am mindful that I may not, in some cases, represent the average or stereotypical household, it allowed me to exercise greater humility and respect for that invisible burden, as you would call it. But it also forced me to want to make better decisions, because I think until sometimes we experience or we start to build up that sort of awareness that we recognize that we may actually have it all wrong, right? So whereas before, let's say personally and professionally, I was more in tune to want to just deliver for my employer and be, I guess, ignorant of all of that, the demands on the house, the demands on, yeah. I became much more aware, and it actually forced me to want to make some changes personally, and even to make some provision to recognize that, yes, the income is important, but it's the quality time spent, and how do we strike a balance. With respect to the volcanic eruption, my employer called me, their HR called me and asked if I would like to get some time off or some leave. I was even asked if I would like to speak to a counselor. And again, I'm saying this may not necessarily be the stereotypical employer. Notwithstanding, that experience tells me that we have to become more of a caring firm. We have to become more of a caring society. And it is my hope or my desire, especially when we are having debates on forum like this, and even when we engage with our members and the wider public, to start to advocate or at least try to highlight the things that we're doing good, those positive case studies, and try to promote more of it. So we definitely have a commitment to tackle mental health issues, work-related stress, harassment, and all of these things. We definitely have a responsibility as firms and as a membership association to provide more access to the right type of support, psychosocial, you name it. We definitely have to be mindful that even as management or as leaders or thought leaders, we don't necessarily have it right, and sometimes we need to humble ourselves as knowledge evolves to come back to our staff, come back to our audience, and try to engage and sort of fail forward. That's my submission.
Right. Good, Mr. Hope. One of the things that we notice in workplaces and so on that can help with the safety and health is signs. Signage is important. Proper signs in the workplace, reading material for people that can help, and so on. Mr. Eddie.
Right.
Is this a part of the Labor Department's, thrust?
Yes. Thank you again, Leswai. This hits the nail on the head. I think we would have spoke a bit about the labor inspections, and permit me also to just address the caller, the two callers that called in. We thank you for listening so attentively to our dialogue. But I think the caller, when he was expressing his views, he made a submission about the point of comfort and how we were basically addressing the line of how much comfort should the employee have with regards to their own safety. And I think my point on that was that, does it mean that because I'm comfortable wearing sneakers, I should wear my sneakers over my hard tip shoes? No, I might say, well, my hard tip shoes it's more heavy. So for me, it's less comfortable because it's more heavy, so that's more burden on my own physical capacity. But then that's what I was addressing in terms of, yeah, your own safety is not just about you being comfortable, but it's about protecting yourself. So I just wanted that caller to understand that angle, but I also thank him for listening so attentively. Now to you, Leswai, in regards to the signage. As I would have indicated during our inspections, we tend to look for these same things. Signages are one of the areas that we pay special attention to. In fact, there are areas where we ask employers, Kevin might have been aware of this, that we ask employers to have doors labeled, areas labeled. So, for example, this door leads to an area where you would want just your employees, so no public. So we would ask them to put a sign on the door that says employees only, no entrance beyond this point if you're not authorized. So things like this upon different work areas. We have the construction site, which the callers seem to have a very specific agendas for. We have areas on the construction site that you must wear your goggles apart when you're coming into this area. You must wear your, Michelina would have brought up Skelec. We are aware that there are some great noises up there, and you would expect that the workers up there are aware of certain points that you must wear your earplugs so that you protect your own well-being in terms of your hearing and your ears. So yes, proper signage is a part of our inspections, and we do that in every inspection that we do.
Right. Michelina, before we go, we are basically out of time, but you mentioned something very important in terms of not everyone is able to read. And so therefore it is very important, because sometimes, you have a lot of products and there are safety instructions on them. Mm-hmm. You have to read the safety instructions, manual, what to do and what not to do. Right, Let it not go on your skin.
And if it does,
and do not inhale, do not ingest, and all that sort of a thing. And, even the use of equipment, how to use equipment is actually important, the proper use of equipment. Because if you don't know how to use the equipment, it can end up hurting you injuring you. So the following of safety instructions, the following of how to use equipment properly, these things are very important to prevent injuries and even death and illness.
So education becomes paramount in an OSHA agenda. You cannot have compliance without competency. I'm looking at him and I'm like, signage, if you cannot read, if you cannot decode, you cannot comply. It might say dangerous, but your employee, the employer cannot read, so they cannot interpret, they cannot prevent the danger. And not just general competency and literacy, but we also need to look at accessibility and differentability. Right now in the high school that I work, we have a blind student, and so signage needs to be very three-dimensional and accessible. How do I talk to my child who is blind? I must describe myself and be aware that in order for her to relate to me as an African-American, Kititian, mid-30s young woman, she must have an appreciation for her teacher that I would take for granted that those who are seeing have obviously.
Yes, and very good point. And even in the workplace, how workplaces are, we have to be mindful of people with disabilities and things like that. I mean, are there ramps? Are there lifts at the workplace? Are there bathrooms and so on with, you know, that are properly outfitted for people with disabilities and so on? These are some of the things that we have to take into consideration in terms of safety and health at the workplace. And in that way, we are more inclusive of all, right? We are out of time, so I'm going to give you at least a minute to each of you to wrap up. I would have liked to touch on Michelina with some of the compensation and all of that, but I suppose that's for another time.
Definitely.
Yes. Mr. Eddie.
Yes, that's why once again I would like to thank you for allowing us to come on this program and have this dialogue. I think most of the time, Kevin would have said it yesterday, we had a small briefing yesterday, and Kevin would have said, where do we go from here? Is it just this dialogue? Is it just this program? And then everyone goes back to their own corner and we wait until another year where we could come back again and discuss it. And I think this is where it comes back down to the culture change, where we have to keep having these dialogues, keep having these forums. And as Michelina keeps touching on, the education is so important. It's different fractions that you have to educate. It's just not the managers, just not the worker. Coming out of school, having persons from a young age, tender age, understanding what safety is, so that when they get older, even before they get older, they could ask their father, ask their aunt, ask their uncle, if they are following certain safety standards, if they are understanding what safety is, before they go out into the world of work. So that's why, thanks again. Just permit me to just advertise. We have, in the celebration of this year's World Day for Safety and Health, we have one more activity that we will use tomorrow, the 28th, which is the actual day which we celebrate World Day for Safety and Health. We are asking the general public if they want to visit the Department of Labor. They would see one or two exciting activities. We have a little fair. So parents, teachers, if you are not that busy, you can maybe bring your class just to see one of the things that we have on display at the Department of Labor. And also we would have a little dance just to, you know, show some level of new era of how we are going to approach safety and health at the workplace. So thank you again, Leslie.
Right, so where is the Department of Labor?
Yes,
it's important that people know that.
Right,
the
thank
direction.
you. Yes, we are located upstairs in Neville's Eatery. That's up at Lime Keel. Most persons would know it at the Best Buy area. Once you come up there, you would see the signs and you would see the Department of Labor. Thank you.
Mr. Hope?
Just an appeal to our private sector. You're welcome. We're happy to have dialogue and try to learn how we can better serve you. The Chamber of Industry and Commerce, we are committed to building a positive occupational safety and health culture through dialogue. We believe in promoting an environment where workers can feel comfortable in airing their concerns about the possible risk and hazard within the workplace. And we have an equal commitment by our management and within our membership to ensure that we work assiduously to address the issue. We believe firmly in providing support, a happy and productive workplace, and by extension, household. So, thank you.
Right, thank you. Michelina.
Let me reiterate the theme for this panel. Let us act together to build a positive safety and health culture. What I want us to leave here with is the importance of together. And so I'm making an appeal for all workers to join the St. Kitts Nevis Trades and Labor Union. And do not leave it for the circumstance that you are in trouble to join the union. The strength of the union is based on the density of the union. Membership, influence, impact. And so if you want the union to negotiate for you within the workplace, you have to become a member. And it is better that you become a member before. So bring a friend and come and join up. We are located on Church Street at Mass's house. I'm also appealing to Mr. Hope to reimagine who is the professional and what is a business, because educators are business owners, and education is the business of preparing the workforce. So I'm expecting some educators to be invited into chamber, because representation matters in all sectors. We need a we and a together approach. Come and join the union.
Okay, thank you to all three of you, to Mr. Eddie, to Mr. Hope, and to Ms. Charles Hazel for being here and for bringing awareness to the issue of safety and health at work. Very, very important if we are to have productive workplaces, workplaces where people can feel emotionally, psychologically, physically well. It is important that we promote safety and health. So thank you to all three of you. Thank you to all of our callers to today's program. We do appreciate you from week to week. We will be back next week with another Working for You program. Until then, I am Les Roy Williams. Take good care.